How you doing? It's Global Politics with Jim Martin. Today I'm going to talk about the last of the three elections on Super Sunday last week. This one being the first round presidential election in Poland. I've covered the Portuguese legislative election and the second round Romanian presidential election in other videos. You can check those out. This time we're going to talk about Poland. So in Poland, their president has ceremonial duties, but also retains the right to veto legislation that comes out of the government and its coalition partners. A relatively important position, especially right now, and especially considering who has been president and who might be president moving forward. Current president is a guy named Duda, who is a hardliner. He is a member of the PIS party. In English, that is the Law and Justice Party. And they're an extreme right-wing party that had held power in Poland for 8 or 9 years. And they did a lot of damage to institutions of law, courts, and to some extent media in Poland until they lost in 2023. They lost a legislative election and were replaced by a much more liberal party led by Donald Tusk, a guy who has been around the block in terms of representing Poland in Europe and representing the people of Poland and Poland in general in a variety of European settings for quite some time. Donald Tusk is the prime minister, and he's the leader of the Civic Platform Party, which is the more center-left party in the constellation of parties in Poland. And the PIS party, again, hard right party, is another major party there. The current president, Duda, has reached the end of his legal term and he can't run again. So that's why they're having this election. Again, it's a 2-round election. Tusk's government is seen as moderately popular, but has been unable to move forward with some of its centerpiece legislation because they keep getting vetoed by Duda. The coalition under Donald Tusk doesn't have enough seats to overcome those vetoes. So difficult spot there. Major issues in this election were abortion. Poland is a majority Catholic country and a generally conservative one in terms of social issues. LGBTQ rights are another major issue, and national defense. Interestingly enough, PIS is not pro-Russian and is in support of Ukraine. If anything, they're more militaristic than pretty much anybody else. But everybody in Poland is on board with the idea that they need to really amp up their military spending. They've been doing fine in terms of NATO requirements. They've exceeded NATO military spending requirements for some time, hitting about 4.5% in the last 3 or 4 years and maintaining that. The handwriting is on the wall as far as they're concerned with Russia, Russian aggression, and the potential dissolution of NATO with Donald Trump. So pretty much every party is pushing that narrative. So what happened? We've had this first round presidential election there in Poland. Karol Nawrocki of that PIS, Law and Justice Party, won about 25-ish% of the vote. These aren't final numbers, but they're pretty close. And Rafał Jaworski of that PO party, the center-left party that heads the coalition under Prime Minister Donald Tusk, got 31.4, which is somewhat lower than expected. Nobody else is polling really above 12% before, but another far-right politician who's from an even further right party won about 15% of the vote. So when you start thinking about, okay, so now we're moving on to the final round, that's going to be June 1st. So it's going to be a furious couple of weeks of campaigning to try to get various people on the sides of these two individuals. So they're the ones that came out with the most votes. The top 2 vote getters move forward, everybody else is out. But those voters that cast their votes for those folks are there and they need to be spoken to. And so both of these individuals are out there campaigning right now. Here's another thing that's kind of interesting. Every one of these elections was on a Sunday. When people aren't working, they can go and vote on a Sunday. Isn't that amazing? And therefore, their voter turnout is higher. Now, I looked at Polish voter turnout in presidential elections in the 2 different rounds going back for some years. Voter turnout is an issue here, and it's part of the strategy in that many people seem to sit out that first round and then jump in when it really matters and vote in the second round. So you could see voter turnout be like in Romania, something like 5 to 7 to 10% higher than it was in the first round. But first round turnout was about 63% is what the numbers are saying right now. That's pretty high. We'll see if they can get that higher, if that same bump happens. It's happened in every Polish 2-round presidential election for some years. So it's quite likely that you have this upwelling of support for Raphael Jaworski, but it's tight. This would be somewhat of a surprise win if the PO candidate Jaworski can pull it off. I know one guy who has a lot of experience in Poland, and he's out of the country, so I don't want to pester him about it. But it's one of those moments. It's like, will the pro-democracy, pro-liberalization, pro-EU forces continue to gain momentum in Poland, or will they continue to be hamstrung by a president that vetoes their legislative agenda? So June 1st is coming up, and I will report back to you on that when we get to that point. If you have any context on this election and want to share that, please do so in the comments. We can all learn more about the context in different places around the world where these elections are taking place. And I certainly don't pretend to know everything, no doubt about it. Another thing to consider, I'm not sure that I've talked about Poland before, but people should be paying attention to Poland. Poland has a robust and diverse economy. They have a solid demographic structure, and they have something approaching 95 million people in Poland, making them one of the larger countries in Europe. And I think a lot of people tend to ignore them for some reason, and they shouldn't. Poland has a powerful, capable military and really is one of the leading countries in Europe, and certainly will be moving forward. There is a reason that Donald Tusk was one of the people invited to go with Chancellor Merz, President Macron, and PM Keir Starmer to go to Ukraine recently to show European solidarity, because Poland definitely belongs in that conversation. I look forward to visiting with you again. I'll have an update on this after June 1st. And again, any comments that you have that might bring more context and knowledge to the situation, please feel free to share those in the comments. I look forward to talking to you again very soon. Thanks.